to deal with the tornado stuff, to deal with everything else. Let's see, I was talking to John yesterday, actually, and he was saying that a few of his folks, radio-wise, are worried that
Spin it again.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena.
You know what, I've heard people call, and I kind of like the era that we're in, the post-truth kind of era.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was watching CNN fake news. What do you think?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Let us return to the fight. This battle is far from over.
morning. This is Real News. I'm your host, David Shine Thompson. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for joining us this morning. On the line, you know him, you love him. The master of mystery, Mr. Henry. Good morning, sir.
How's it going, sir? You doing all right this morning, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. I love our intro music.
I know. Shout out to everyone out there in internet land, in this digital space, this digital community we're trying to create. We got a weird little interesting hodgepodge, this sort of eclectic mix of folks across the state and across the nation, across the world, really. My buddy John, the supreme intellect that he is, hanging out in here. James is with us, Kelly. John and James are here in the central Tennessee, middle Tennessee area. Judy's out there. We got a couple folks out here with us, but
with our powers combined, we can be like Captain Planet, but less lame. But less lame.
Right. That is right, too. How's everybody doing this morning? Greatest nation of appreciation. Greatest nation. Greatest.
You almost got it. There you go.
I got it. It is the greatest nation, though. It's true, buddy.
Yeah,
greatest
it's true.
audience in the nation appreciation segment right now. Folks out there in the chat section, let me know how you're doing, how you're feeling. How's life for you right now? Any cause of concern? Any prayer requests you got? Anything else you got going on? Any financial concerns? I'm doing all right. Shine, we were just talking off air, is doing all right. We were actually just talking too about how sleep. I had this article pulled up for this morning. I just figured it was a little bit too kitschy to actually run with, but sleep, one of the most important things you'd be getting going right now. You know?
Yeah, I got some extra sleep last night.
Nice.
And I guess it's probably like normal sleep for normal time, but with all this going on and the things that we're trying to do and the new projects we're starting, like I've had some trouble sleeping the past couple weeks. And last night I was really worn out. I've been kind of hitting it a little short the past couple nights, and around 10 o'clock I was like, I can go to sleep. I need to just go to sleep. Right. Or the rest of the week isn't going to be very good. So I got some extra sleep, and I recommend that for everyone. Try to get a little extra sleep. I feel excellent. I feel like I had like 5 Mountain Dews or something. I feel great. I feel like Tim Burchett.
That wouldn't come in this really early morning, bro. We're just Tim Burchett is like, hey, this is Congressman Burchett. I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm going to say.
I'm still asleep, but what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Then you give the guy a Mountain Dew, and he's like,
he's like, I'm Congressman Burchett right here. And let me ask you this, buddy. My sister just popped in the chat here, okay? My brother and sister here. Both shout out to Tracy and Victoria. But this is one of the very few times that you see my sister just got married. I'm seeing.
Congratulations, Busy.
Right, I just got married in January time frame there. Congratulations. But this is one of the first times I'm seeing on paper or on the internet or on somewhere Victoria Henry Weatherby. Was that weird for you the first time you saw your sister's last name with not the Thompson attest to it?
Yes, the first time I saw yes, it was weird, man. But I saw it at the wedding. What were you doing? I saw it on the invitation also, so you're a little bit behind. But yeah, it is a little bit weird when you see it out in the world. I remember the first time I saw it on Facebook.
Out in the wild, right.
Out in the wild. I remember the first time I saw it on Facebook, and I was like, it's like she's not my sister anymore.
Yeah,
she's someone's wife, which is different.
Well, at least she did the thing where she pushed the last name into a middle name, actually. That's what my wife did. She didn't have a middle name prior to us getting married. Her last name is Apachedian, so she's now Gabriella Apachedian Henry, which is this terrible.
Which makes her way cooler than the rest. That is so cool sounding. She sounds like a really cool character in a movie. Say it one more time. Say it again.
Gabriella Apachedian Henry.
Wow.
It's that Henry in the last name that messes it all up, though. Then it is a beautiful stall, American wall, right?
It makes it approachable. You add Henry at the end,
I like that.
There you go.
Let's get into this, man. All right, so
we're bringing a little brevity because the topic is not.
No,
it's not light. So
no, it's not. And we normally start the program with some local stuff, some local updates in the COVID-19 situation, and we do have those. We have Governor Lee updates. We also have updates from the mayor here in the Nashville area saying, hey, we're going to have a quote unquote substantial property tax increase due to the tornado situation, now the unemployment situation going on as well. We have all that information to get to. We also have stuff going on with the FISA court warrants. That's a major deal that nobody's talking about. I, however, want to start with this issue yesterday because Sean and I try and pay attention to what's going on in the world. And Shine does a great job of actually streaming these watch parties on the Real News channel. We're actually coming out with several new ways to get involved with us. Everybody pay attention. We'll stay tuned. We're going to have a multitude of ways for you to get involved with these watch parties. It's a real shared experience, by the way, when we do these things. Comment section is going wild, all that stuff. Yesterday, though, Shine, the beginning of this COVID-19 task force update hearing struck me as a little odd. I'm not sure if it struck you as a little odd. Let's jump straight into it right now, though, so people know what we're talking about. Give some context.
Well, yeah. Well, no, let's talk about it for just a second. Let's talk about it for just a second. Like, you talked about your feelings, your impression when it started. You talking about when you saw who was standing on the stage?
Yeah, even that.
Yeah, I think the visual from the beginning of the press conference yesterday was a stark difference from what we've been experiencing up to this point. I mean, yesterday you had a whole bunch of people in military uniforms walking out. And I don't know about you, but from the beginning, I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if we were announcing like a new war or we thwarted an attack. You know, I thought we were about to get a report about how an attack was thwarted. Or I don't know, just all those military uniforms. And then I recognized the guy who's head of the DOD, even though he's not wearing a military uniform. He's always wearing a suit. But I was like, oh, wow. So I wonder, this can't be just about the Army and Navy and Marines announcing that they're going to be building hospitals or moving supplies. It's got to be something more serious. It struck a serious tone with me immediately. I think I called you. I think I called you and I was like, you need to be watching this right now.
Yeah, and that's we were even having a good comment again during those watch parties. Shine and I are both in there. Sometimes we're both commenting from the Real News channel, or sometimes it's from our personal channels or whatever. But we were even talking to each other about that there, saying as I tuned in, because this is how in the know Mr. Henry is. I thought to myself, is that Defense Secretary Mark Esper? Is that Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Mark Milley? Not really. I didn't know these guys' names, but it just like Shine. I did see the military garb up there and thought to myself, is this a COVID-19 situation we're about to hear about, or is there something different going on? Is this interrelated at all? And then Shine, I immediately jumped back to, oh yeah, that's right. Attorney General Barr came out and let everyone know, like this time last week, that Venezuelan President Maduro was actually wanted by the DOJ for drug trafficking. Is this? I assume this is related to that. Obviously, we're going to play the clips here in a minute.
I do want to give Mr. Henry the credit.
I
do want to give Mr. Henry the credit. He did say that.
Right.
Before they announced it, he was like, remember that Maduro memo?
Right. And actually, because you're giving me credit, I want to give Richard Esparza credit, another person that's been integral to this program since the very beginning. He's the one that originally passed that on to us the day that story broke. Anyways, go ahead, Sean. I cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just giving I just wanted the audience to know that actually happened. Like, before they announced they were, well, and we can get into now maybe the meat of it a little bit before we play the video. And it's in our description. Mr. Henry did a great job with his notes. You can go to the description of the video either on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch and look at the meat of it. The United States is moving a lot of resources underneath Southern Command in an effort to, wait for it, fight drugs. We're sending the Army, Navy, and Air Force to fight drugs. Well, I guess, and people who move them. Via across the southern border. But we'll play a little bit of the video. But to me, it sounded like a big response. I think we've had a war on drugs that never really stopped. It's been going on for 50 years. To me, it sounds like a lot. But Mr. Henry, I don't want to give away the whole thing. But I don't know exactly which parts you're going to play. So I don't want to give it all away.
I'll start with Trump here, but let me at least just preface this video by reading a smaller portion of this Fox News article from a week ago. Let's see. This is March 26th, coming out the night of the 25th here. U.S. Department of Justice on last Thursday, unsealed a criminal indictment against Venezuelan social leader Nicolas Maduro and several quote co-conspirators, accusing them of an array of narcotics and traffic-related crimes, including efforts to smuggle drugs in the United States. Now, this is at a press conference last Thursday. This is also a slightly odd press conference because you remember at the very beginning, Attorney General Barr made a big deal about this is the first time we're doing a virtual press conference. I hope it goes well. I hope it goes all right. Everybody in these boxed corners of the screen with the cameras on them, just like we're doing now. It was a Zoom-style press conference, right? First time they've done that in DOJ history. So at this press conference, Department of Justice officials announced a slew of charges pertaining to Maduro's conspiracy to commit narco-terrorism, what they're calling it, which carries a minimum of years behind bars. The DOJ underscored that while it's currently, underscored that while he is currently in Venezuela, the 57-year-old is known to travel outside and is now offering a $15 million reward. They're now offering a $15 million reward. I think that leads perfectly into a little bit of this Trump announcement right now. Let's go right here, get the word from the man himself, as I just fast forwarded way past that point. Goodness, live program, we shine.
You're doing hey, you're doing a great job. I mean, Mr. Henry, it's so cool that we have the technology where we can both be watching a video and the audience can watch it. It's really cool. So we'll deal with it.
Let's start with President Trump here.
Today, the United States is launching enhanced counter-narcotics operations in the Western Hemisphere to protect the American people from the deadly scourge of illegal narcotics. We must not let the drug cartels exploit the pandemic to threaten American lives. In cooperation with the 22 partner nations, U.S. Southern Command will increase surveillance, disruption, and seizures of drug shipments and provide additional support for eradication efforts, which are going on right now at a record pace. We're deploying additional Navy destroyers, combat ships, aircraft and helicopters, Coast Guard cutters, and Air Force surveillance aircraft, doubling our capabilities in the region. Very importantly, our forces are fully equipped with personnel, protective equipment, and we've taken additional safety measures to ensure our troops remain healthy. Secretary Mark Esper, Attorney General Bill Barr, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien will provide more details. In addition, I'm going to have General Milley, who's done an incredible job in so many ways, say a few words. And also with us, our Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gilday, who I think you know, and Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Schultz. So I'm going to ask Mark to start, and then we can...
Before we get into Mark here, Shine, let me just say this real quick. This seems like a perfect opportunity to let everybody know and make this clear line of delineation, a clear distinction that what this program is Shine and myself. We just love y'all. We love the community we're building. We love the opportunity to do real news again. This is our project, though, okay? The fact that we mention that we're employed by Americans for Prosperity is just something we like to mention because we love what they're doing. It fits well with our program. We genuinely believe in everything that they do to try and make this country better, to try and make our state better. I'm making that line right now, though, Sean, because we're about to get into a story here that, frankly, buddy, to me, to Grant, to even the Mr. Henry persona, doesn't make a lot of sense, all right?
Yeah, and there might be a little bit of conjecture.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. I don't want people to assume that this is spoken on behalf of somebody else or that my conjecture extends beyond the bounds of my opinion itself.
Just say, everything you say is your opinion and no one else's.
Let me ask this.
And me too. My opinion is mine and no one else's.
Let me kick it to you, and let me kick it to the chat section right now. By the way, Stephanie's in there, Kathleen's in there, Norm's in there. What's up, buddy? Ryan Broderick, get out of here, man. My buddy Ryan, all the way back from days when I was living back in Charlotte, man. Joanna's in there. We got John's back in there. Got a bunch of folks in there. Say what's up in the comment section, those folks.
Good morning, comments.
What are you making of this story, Shine? Let me kick to you right now that we have like the basic layout. Sounds like we're going to war at the southern border.
Okay, yeah, hold on. We'll work up to that. First off, Donald Trump didn't have the normal energy that he has. By the way, thanks Veronica Hill RDH for liking the stream. But it didn't seem like he was himself. He was not reading that with energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't want to say that anyone's lying or anything like that, or there's any grand conspiracy, but it sounded from just like what he was reading that's not all that's going on with this announcement. And that is all I really know. I mean, anything else I could say, Mr. Henry, is really conjecture. I don't know why they needed to make an announcement about fighting drug cartels on the southern border. I feel like that's something we already do on a regular basis, all the time. In fact, didn't President Trump give an order to move troops to the southern border? 2 years ago, and never rescinded it. And to help build the wall and to shore up security measures and things like that. I mean, we're already doing that kind of stuff. We already have partnerships with Mexico to fight the drug cartels and things. I mean, do y'all remember Fast and Furious? That was some kind of weird double cross organization where we were fighting them yet working with them at the cartels is what I'm saying. Fighting them and working with them at the same time or whatever. That was in 2014, 13. I mean, we've been doing that. So I don't know. The fact that we have the whole nation is shut down. Every nation is shut down. And also, it's the heat's really about to turn up in South America and Central America. They're one of the last regions of the world for this to really flare up, besides portions of Africa. And, places where people are not heavily populated or places where people don't travel to. But it's about to really turn up in Southern and Central America. We already do drug operations in Mexico and Central America. Why Maduro was mentioned when you're talking about just fighting, why would the head of state be mentioned in a press conference about fighting drugs in South America and Central America if it wasn't about that let me just put it this way, as far as like narrative structure, let me tell you why I think there's more to this. You don't mention an old Russian director used to say, you don't put a shotgun in scene 1 without using it in scene 2. Someone, if you put a shotgun on a table in a movie in scene 1, in scene 2, someone's getting shot with the shotgun. Why did they mention Maduro, the head of state? You don't mention the head of state unless you have an opinion about whether or not he should be the head of state and whether or not you feel like you may want to act on that opinion. You mentioned it before, but those were my initial thoughts, and I'm trying to shy away from just straight conjecture. I'm trying to base it off stuff because I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to make wild accusations. I mean, this is not a time for wild accusations. We need to stick with kind of what we know. But what I know is something about that did not sound like what they're saying it is. That's what I know.
And let me say this, and that's, I think, where a lot of people's heads initially go to, okay? Norm was actually saying in Facebook a second ago, here's your comment saying, this is more than narcotics. That's immediately where he went, right? He said, this is more than traffic drugs, he went on to comment a second ago. Josh actually says in Facebook, too, probably just a show of force at a time when the world may see us, the United States, I presume, as weakened. I wouldn't read into that too much, he says. Now, that's what's interesting here.
Now, Josh, I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But we did have the head of DOD come out, I think a week and a half ago, and gave a whole to the world, hey, just so you know, we may be sick, but we're more on alert and our defenses are better than they would be in normal times, so don't mess with us. We had that talk. We had the head of the Department of Defense come out to the world, I think it was like a week and a half ago. He kind of wrapped it in the Army and Navy or whatever. The DOD is going to help with building field hospitals, and the Army Corps of Engineers is going to build things or whatever. He wrapped it in that. But he also said very plainly, like, do not mess with the United States. We are ready for you if you mess with us. I know and Josh, I know it's a show of force to show the world where we're not weak, but no one has attacked the United States since Pearl Harbor. I don't know if people are generally super worried about that.
We were actually just talking off air right before we came off air. It's a funny thing that I keep saying. We were talking off Facebook Live or whatever right before.
I like
we came
off air. Let's use the terminology. We were talking off air. We were
talking off air. It's just everything right now. We're sitting at such unprecedented times for all of this stuff. For the way that media is covering these stories. I have another story actually in the show notes right now that was brought to my attention yesterday. Totally off topic, but just to prove a little bit of the point here. Apparently, Dr. Fauci published some article a while ago that's now contradicting the media coverage. He published an article with two other co-publishers on March 26th. There's the date. That's contradicting some of the media coverage of the numbers that are coming out of COVID-19. Everything is unprecedented. We don't know whether to trust media. And even before this, buddy, we didn't know which stories were true, which stories were untrue. We didn't know where to go and find truthful reporting, all right? And now in a situation like this, with the COVID-19 situation, everybody's on lockdown. The NBA is getting shut out. Every major sporting event is getting shut out. Schools are getting, there is nothing for me to reference this in with my life, at least in a reasonable manner. All right. So when you come across a story like this, we're already sort of primed. You get what I'm saying, buddy? Like we're already sort of primed and set, and the anticipation has been set to not exactly see this as okay, whatever the government tell me is straight up the truth here. Now, again, this is not my personal opinion. I'm just saying I think that's where people are. Plus, you couple that with a lot of the other related stories that we might get to today. The related stories being, by the way, IG Horowitz just came out and said that basically every single time the FBI was applying for a FISA court warrant, they were straight up lying. All right, they had no evidence to substantiate anything called the Woods file. A Woods file is basically anytime you cite something in a FISA court application, you have to back it up with substantial evidence, corroborated evidence. Okay, every single time they were looking through these FISA court warrants, if you don't know what that is, it's that surveillance thing they did on Carter Page, basically the way they were trying to surveil the Trump administration, or at least that time the Trump candidacy. None of that stuff was cited on evidence. So you take all this into account of, I don't know how much I can trust the government story right now. And then you bring it to a story like this in the midst of what's going on with the COVID-19. It doesn't strike me as odd that even marginally rational people would think to themselves, I don't know, something's off. But here's what I'm saying, though, okay? Take a lot into account, but then also think it's also not surprising to think that individuals, just a single person, a slightly nefarious person would take advantage of a crisis like this. It's also not wild to think that a drug cartel, of all things, would certainly take advantage of a weakened state. I think that's a little bit of what Josh is talking about here is like, okay, it's probably very likely, highly likely that a drug cartel could take advantage of say weakened southern border, of say take advantage of a weakened American economy, and take advantage of a weakened everything. The drug problem by itself may be something to look after, because coupling a COVID-19 situation with an influx of drugs is a recipe for disaster for the healthcare system. And then think about this, Shine, okay? Think about if they don't get a handle on this problem, what's going on in China right now. This is, again, Mr. Henry, just his opinion, nobody else's opinion, speculating slightly. What's going on in China right now is they're seeing a second introduction, or at least some reports are saying a second introduction of the COVID-19 by way of outside international travel. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So maybe some of this too is like, we need to start looking at ways we can figure out stuff that we cannot account for coming into this country, i.e. drug trafficking. If a major pipeline is set up now and we have a reintroduction of the COVID-19 situation in the fall, if those people are bringing in not just drugs, but a reintroduction of this virus, this illness, dude, now we have problems on top of problems on top of problems. So maybe it is just the government story is exactly what's going on, but I think that's what's most difficult right now, and possibly points to even a larger story than this, is the inability for people to properly parse truth right now. It's not the inability, maybe even the lack of capacity right now for people to understand what's actually happening. Because I'll say this right now, the initial feeling I had was, dude, that's a lot of military activity. That's a lot of military garb for something that's going on with the COVID-19 situation that has very little to do with that. All right. That was my initial reaction. It took me for a while to sit down and pros and cons list analysis thing to try and get to the point where I just came to well, it does make sense that the government story is probably true. They did tell us a week ago, right? They did tell us a week ago that they were charging this guy with this drug stuff. I'll look through some of the comments if you want to get some of those, or if you want to respond to that.
I just want to say, I just want to add to the context that the president was considering moving troops to the Canadian border a week ago. I just want to add that for context. And I believe that Canada asked them not to, but then Canada sent troops to the border. So I just want to add that for context. This may just be, it may be a little bit like what Josh was saying. It may be like a show of force, or just saying, hey, our borders are secure, because we have some really long borders. You know, I think the U.S.-Canada border is the largest, at least in one of the articles I was just reading about Trudeau asking Trump not to send troops to the Canadian border. It said it was the largest undefended border in the world, or the U.S.-Canada border. And also, you know, it's a little bit easier for people to get into Canada from certain parts of the world than it is the United States. But Mexico as well. Mexico's in the same boat. But and I guess you'd have to watch some of the video from yesterday. And I think even watching the part we did, you get the feeling that it's more than just drugs. Like I was saying, we've been in the war on drugs. We've had assets. There are military helicopters on the U.S. southern border that go across and and can point a camera right at where the drug cartels are. We've had people down there. And like I said, even recently, we had troops down there working on the wall. I mean, and never stopped. So I'm just throwing that out there, that it just doesn't, something about it doesn't feel right. But I just want to remind everybody, we're in a time of emergency, and not just situationally, but legally. Legally, we are in a time of emergency. I wonder if the War Powers Act is not in play during a time of emergency. You know?
And Josh actually agreed with you here, saying, agreed, Shine, no nation is threatening the border. We're just demonstrating strength and vigilance. Sherry says in Facebook here, I love the look of military versus drugs. And John, again, throwing out these quotes from the man. This is why I love the Real News audience, buddy. It's just like, goodness gracious.
They bring the heat.
Better at this than we are. They bring the heat. John says in Facebook right here, I keep thinking of Hank Paulson's bazooka theory. If people know you have a bazooka in your pocket, you may never have to use it. So it's a little bit true, is it not? I mean, and here's another situation that just came to my mind, buddy. Okay, so think about the interesting cocktail of situations that's happening in America right now. I had a story pulled up a second ago that I didn't know if I wanted to cover today. I kind of just wanted to let this feel and play out before I start to dive into it too much. But the economics behind, obviously, the unemployment situation going on right now. My wife sent me something this morning. I think last week in Tennessee alone, we were bordering like about 40,000 people that applied for unemployment. This week, it's bordering at about 30,000 people that are applying for unemployment. So think about this, Sean. Okay, we have more unemployment claims now than we possibly ever have once we get into the end of this.
6.6 million right now.
Right. So we have a lot of people, and by the end of this whole thing, it's going to be substantially more than that. I would predict. Okay. So maybe some of the people up in top government are thinking to themselves, like, as unemployment is continuing to skyrocket, one of the easiest ways to find quick money is to get into this whole drug trade industry type thing, right? So maybe they're also thinking, hey, not only would there be a massive supply, but the demand in America is going to skyrocket. The increase is going to skyrocket. The demand for fast, quick money is going to skyrocket. The demand for somebody hiring is going to skyrocket. And drugs, dude, it's going to sound weird to say, drugs are always hiring. You get what I'm saying, buddy? So I think that's another thing that they're trying to think about. It is, look, if we don't stymie some of this off now, we're going to have a massive problem, not just from the virus situation, not just from an economic situation, not from a drug situation, either from dude, potentially we might be creating generational problems with some of this stuff.
Well,
right?
Drugs are not. When people make money off selling drugs, they gain power too. I was just thinking, what is a comparable situation? I don't know. I was thinking about during the Depression, and then also the time we made alcohol illegal. What came out of that was a bunch of, power centers in the United States that were not under government authority, that were under organized crime. The Al Capone era and things like that. I think there's probably a little bit of that too, is they don't want to see large hordes of unemployed men under the command of somebody that's committing illegal acts, because they're out of work. Like you said, that was a very good point you just made. There's a lot of people out of work, and drugs are always hiring, and that's totally unfortunate. I do want to say, too, to add to your theory a little bit, right now, booze sales have increased 55% nationwide, but in certain places, it spiked up. Online alcohols, according to, what is this, Nielsen, 243% higher. What is it? Spirits like tequila and gin mixed cocktails are up 75%. I'm just reading this article. Booze sales surged during coronavirus outbreak. Imagine how much, even though people have less money, how much drugs have surged. So maybe they're looking at data that we don't have,
And this might sound like an odd time to plug this idea of businesses that are innovating for the Facebook audience again. But again, so we don't run into this problem in the future, so people can maintain employment. One small way, and let me stress that it is super small. I'm not trying to do any sense of virtue signaling here at all. So one small way we're trying to help the Real News audience is anybody listening to this program now, after the live broadcast, anybody seeing the chat comment section on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch, any of these platforms are streaming that Sean does such a great job pushing out to. If you know of ways that businesses are trying to innovate, if you know of ways that we can still help support local businesses through the sort of digital age, this digital community that we're building, let us know, man. Send us a direct message, put it in the Facebook audience. We'll try and set up something where we can promote their business a little bit. We're just trying to figure out ways how to keep this economy going, keep people employed, keep jobs going, right? It's a major situation we need to look at while we are also dealing with the health of this nation. We also need to look at the physical health and the economic health at the same time. If you know some of these businesses need some help that are trying to innovate, get that message to us. We'll try and get them on the program, give a quick pitch as to what their thing is. And with the economic health going on, man, I think this is a good segue point into something that's going on in the Nashville area.
Yeah, let's talk about
just read
that.
the headline here from
the Trump thing. That's something we'll keep up with, but that's
Yeah.
really, we don't want to get too far into conjecture. So let's move on to this Nashville deal.
Fox 17 headline here. I'll just quote the headline, and then I'll give a bit of context for the Knoxville folks too. Here it is. Nashville's mayor, quote, something we have to, talking about his budget ordinance to include a property tax hike. He's talking about a, quote, substantial property tax hike. Here's the actual quote. Mayor Cooper announced that his budget ordinance will include a sharp property tax increase. The final amount has not yet been determined, but the mayor says it will be, quote, substantial. Now, before I get into some of the actual details of this article, I bring this up in the Nashville area again because we have an eclectic mix of people across the state that watch this program. I'm out in the Nashville area myself. Your guys are out in the Knoxville area. I was talking to a news guy, if you will, buddy, talk radio news guy yesterday, who was telling me they were fearful of this particular story primarily because other, shall we say, blue cities, if you will, are going to follow suit. All right. Now, my personal opinion, Mr. Henry's personal opinion, the mayor of Nashville, John Cooper, is if you had to choose between him and a Kincannon, I would much prefer a Cooper over Kincannon any day of the week. That's my opinion. I can explain that later if you want to. But the idea to me was brought, okay, if Cooper is setting this precedent for a substantial property tax increase, which he says is to deal with, we got a unique situation, granted, it's to deal with the tornado situation going on, coupled with the unemployment stuff going on from the COVID-19. If he's setting that precedent, it's not too far down the road before Kincannon is going to do it out there in the city of Knoxville, and before we have a similar situation going on in Memphis as well. Now, I don't know if you've heard any rumblings like that over there, Shine. If not, I can get into the details of this story. Or, all right.
There we go. Sorry, my mic was off. Our Knoxville mayor has mostly been doing things related to COVID, not really talking about things after COVID.
Okay,
in her
I
press
got you.
conferences. So,
well, let me just explain where this is coming from then, because this is a major talking point for everyone up in Nashville here. And I presume, with hopefully some logic tied to the back of that, I presume that once Nashville sets this precedent, other cities will start having similar style conversations. It seems to be inevitable, but right? I mean, if you're going to have to pay for this increase somehow, there's really only a few ways to do it. You either got to cut massive amounts of spending, or you got to figure out more ways to bring in revenue, right? So here's what it comes down to: is the Nashville City Mayor, Nashville Mayor John Cooper. He announced this during his 57th annual, his first ever State of the Metro address. This was actually on Tuesday. Now, he went on to say that COVID-19's claimed 3 lives in Davidson County, 541 cases in Davidson County. It's basically the Nashville area right there, right? That was as of Tuesday. The city extended their, quote, safer at home order until April 24th, leaving non-essential businesses with closed doors and residents to stay at home. So what he's setting up here is the quite obvious, okay? He goes on to say one more time, the pandemic's impact follows the deadly March 3rd tornado that plowed through Middle Tennessee in Nashville. 2 people lost their lives. And here's the important part, Shine. 2,200 plus, 2,242 structures were either destroyed or damaged, right? So you couple what's going on right now with this safer at home order in the city of Nashville that forced, if you will, for lack of a better term, let's call it what it is, that forced non-essential businesses to close their doors. And then you couple that all happened right after we had 2,200 plus structures that were either destroyed or damaged, another 2 people losing their lives in these tornadoes, right? So obviously the idea is that, at least in Nashville, slightly different situation, but at least in Nashville, we're currently anticipating recovery costs from the tornado, but expect the cost of the coronavirus outbreak, or so the mayor says, to be far more serious on the local impact to our economy. So according to the mayor, Metro government, we went into the final quarter of the 2019-2020 fiscal year with thinned cash balances, they say, and mounting debt payments. On top of that, fourth quarter revenues are estimated to be $200 to $300 million lower than they expected. Now, all of this was the preface.
Fourth quarter last year.
Right, fourth quarter last year.
Nashville, one of the fastest growing cities in the United States by per capita and just rate, like gross rate of people moving per day to Nashville.
Yeah, that's saying 100 people per day or something moving.
I mean, they've increased their tax base by what, double in the past 10 years? Almost double? And they are over leveraged with debt. That is insane.
Well, that's how it goes, though, man.
Well, I guess how it goes is like when you think you're making money, you think you're going to make it forever. And what do they have in Nashville that's so grand that they could say this is what we spent the tax money on?
Well, I see. I don't know, and I suppose what they would say is their tourism attraction, their musicianship, the
That
Grand
was
Ole
already
Opry,
there.
the Strip,
That was there
type.
already. That was there already before everyone
Yeah.
moved to Nashville. I mean, they've done a little bit of upgrades, but I mean, that's mostly been private industry. I mean, unless they've been giving away all their tax revenue, all their sales tax revenue in Nashville by letting people build buildings and giving them pilots or TIFs, or you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Maybe a lot of those big places aren't even paying taxes, and maybe that's why they're low on. That just annoys me a little bit, Grant. Like, if there's any city that should like have its fiscal stuff together in the state of Tennessee, it should be the one where everybody wants to move to, where you have where they've doubled tax, theoretically doubled tax revenue, or maybe even more than that, because the amount of people who make like over $80,000 in Nashville has increased 100-fold or something.
Well, dude, this is also the city where we're giving tens of millions of dollars to Hollywood corporations to come out here and just film in Nashville.
Oh yeah,
like, that's like for literally no
that
other reason.
TV show, they were giving them so much money for that stupid TV show about Nashville.
The Nashville TV show. There was literally legislation that was passed here at the local area that was incentivizing Hollywood to come film here, where we were just using taxpayer expenses to just like say, come film in our city or something, bro. Now, I suppose the idea behind that was if we can make Nashville look like this up and coming area, the more people will move to it, and possibly it paid off.
They did.
Who knows, bro? I don't know.
But right? but that shouldn't have been the end. The end goal should have been we make more tax revenue and can do more things for our people, as opposed to I just want to live in a really cool city. I want to live in like the LA of Tennessee. That's so weird. And I'm mad about that.
This is also the city, buddy, that we're talking about building that soccer stadium on the taxpayer dollar. Now, again, this is why I'm saying I appreciate John Cooper. I appreciate Mayor Cooper more than I do some other, city mayors around the area, because Cooper, to his credit, has stood pretty firm, at least in the grand scheme of things, as opposed to how he affiliates and what he's up against and all that stuff. He's done it. He's stood okay, fairly firm sometimes on pushing back about the idea of like, look, if you want to build a soccer stadium here, figure out a way to pay for itself. Okay, don't burden my citizens for tax dollars to do it for you. Now, again, getting back to the story here, this is where $200 to $300 million lower than expected in fourth quarter revenues. This is what led Cooper to make the announcement that his budget ordinance will include a sharp property rate tax increase. The final amount has not yet been determined. The mayor says that it will be substantial. He goes on to say, this is something we have to do. This is no time for unpleasant realities or gambling with the city's future. We must ensure that we have the resources to get us all the way through this post-virus in Nashville. Metro's finances are in a place where there is no option. We can't print money or borrow to cover our operating expenses. We must raise property taxes, as difficult as that is right now.
So why can't they borrow when interest rates are zero? Why can't they borrow? Is it because they've borrowed? Is it because they've borrowed too much? Is it because their bond rating isn't very good? Is it because they have not been paying? They've only been paying the minimum payments on their bills, on their on their debt? I mean, why in a time where interest rates are zero could they not refinance their debt or get another loan at zero? At almost 0%. Probably because they've borrowed too much already, Mr. Henry. In a time where everyone can get cheap money, Nashville saying they can't get cheap money means they have truly mismanaged their portfolio. Means they have not either they've been late on payments or not paying or they're only paying the minimum instead of trying to take big chunks out. I don't understand why they would say we can't borrow when everyone can borrow right now. I mean, they're not even they've removed all these restrictions from banks and stuff. I don't understand why they're saying they can't borrow right now, unless they've truly mismanaged their fiscal situation.
Let me say this again, and this is probably where I need some help from the comments section. Anybody listening to YouTube or otherwise. I always like to preface this stuff, Mr. Henry likes to tend to be an expert in certain fields, but I also want to be completely honest in these fields that I tend to comment on that I'm about an inch deep, mile wide situation on. And economics is one of those things. I've read just enough economics to have a decent understanding that if I come across someone that genuinely knows what they're talking about, I can carry a conversation. but that's about it. I just know how to ask the leading questions.
Well, hey, all I was asserting,
So-
Mr. Henry, was that I wasn't arguing whether or not they should or shouldn't borrow. I was attacking the contention they said they can't borrow.
No, and this is what I mean.
I can be a layman and say I don't believe that's true as a layman.
That's the same thing I was about to set up. Because even as a layman, I was going to ask the simple question of, the little that I know about economics is either you get more revenue or you cut what you're spending. I mean, Dave Ramsey is good enough to tell you that. Like I've constantly said before, I'm always flabbergasted about the ability for Dave Ramsey to form the empire that he has on very simple precepts of just don't spend money you don't have and don't go into debt for things you don't know to go into debt for, right? I mean, it's just
he lives in Nashville.
Right, yeah, he lives in Nashville. I mean, if every major governmental entity would do that very simple thing, a lot of problems could be solved. So I'm also wondering, in my simple understanding, what spending cuts could we do in the Nashville level that we haven't started considering right now? And maybe some of those spending cuts are things that, like, I don't know, we need them for the controversy. We need them for the crisis going on right now. So the essential things don't cut, but China would have to believe there's a slew of sort of non-essential spending, non-essential expenditures going on right now that could possibly help towards a situation where even if you did have to use a tax increase, a property tax increase, especially in Tennessee, it would be one of the last things you would consider. Because I'll tell you what this is how Nashvilleians are going to look at this, okay? Remember, like last year, a year or two ago, they were talking about doing this massive transit system in Tennessee. Everybody in Nashville, everyone remembers this, right? There's a massive transit system that was going to go on. Knoxville was going to copy it.
$14 billion was the initial price tag.
Right? Knoxville was going to copy it. Memphis was going to figure out something on their own too. Now, once word started getting out that the way they were intending to pay for that was a sales tax increase, what they didn't realize is overnight it would have turned Tennessee into the largest sales tax paying city in the entire nation. Yeah, in the entire United States.
Bigger than Chicago, bigger than LA, bigger sales tax than those cities. Which mostly New York, States, mostly New York, that flabbergasts me. How can you have a higher sales tax than New York City? Have any of y'all ever bought something in New York City? I mean, if try buying a chicken leg in New York City, it'll cost you $25. No joke.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, man, it's an interesting story. Is that, like, when people heard about these situations going on where people are getting arrested for selling loosies, a single loose cigarette, that's part of what China's talking about. It's because a pack of cigarettes up there, because of all the taxes attached to it, cost you $15, $20.
No, I don't know what they cost. 10 years ago when I was living in Manhattan, it cost $20 for a pack of Camels, back when I smoked cigarettes. I no longer smoke cigarettes, but I imagine it's way higher than that now. I bet it's a lot. That was 10 years ago. That was in 2009. In 2009, the cigarette pack, and for Camel cigarettes were $20, and I imagine they're a lot higher than that. But but we accept that because you're like, oh, it's New York. Would we accept that in Tennessee? I don't think so. I don't think so. No way.
And I bring this up, man, to roll into our next story a little bit here, just to say, look, I think this is something that all of us are going to be towards. And again, let me stress one more time, as far as the options that we had here in Nashville, Cooper's not a terrible one. Okay. Cooper gets it right. He's a fiscally minded guy. I think he's trying to do the best by his citizens, by his city. All right. I think he's trying to look at the availability of his options. The same thing with Governor Lee right now. And there's a lot of strange contingencies at play in these southern states in particular. Southern states in particular do not like, this brings up this is where I'm going with this, Sean. In southern states in particular, but we don't like the idea of governments telling us what to do, because we have a strong foundational assessment of what is representative government, right? Of what is this representative republic. I tell this story from time to time, but I think it's worth repeating right now. When I think Shine was actually here with me when this happened, when at the time Knox County Mayor Burchett, now Congressman Burchett, when then Mayor Burchett was announcing his candidacy to run for congressman, he was out there at one of these little markets that he does, one of these little places along the road somewhere. It's a local area that everyone knows, right?
Ball Market number 3.
Yeah, thanks, but I knew you were going to do that. Ball Market number 3. So he's out there making the announcement, ordering camera crews, the whole deal there. It's the time. It's the show. It's the big show. You know what I'm saying? It's Grand Slam territory, right? He's out there making the announcement. In the middle of his announcement, some random guy in the audience just starts asking a question, right? And I was thinking, like, this is going to be awkward. How is a politician going to wiggle his way out of this and get back on topic? Burchett pauses and starts responding to the guy. He starts responding to the question that was asked. And I was like, this guy's not with the media, bro. Like he's not hosting some show. What allegiance does he have to what right does that guy even have to ask that question? And then it hit me, man. I was like, I get it now. These southern states, Tennessee in particular, they get it, dude. The politicians work for the people. They have no job if it were not for those people voting them in there. And that basic understanding is something that's carrying all the way through this COVID-19 situation, buddy. I don't know how many people have been following this story, but in Louisiana, I'm pretty sure, I'll pull the story up as we're talking about it. In Louisiana, she cited charges against a pastor that was still holding services. If you can look this up while we're talking about this, Sean, that might be good. But they cited charge against the pastor.
They mentioned it in the White House press briefing yesterday. They asked President Trump about it. They said there's a megachurch guy in Louisiana who's still holding services, like 500 people, 600 people, something like that. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, okay? And the state or the local municipality, whoever it was, I don't know if they arrested the guy, but they certainly cited him with some charges, okay? And in response to that, what did the head pastor do? He said, we're still holding services. Okay, and there's still going to be hundreds of people, I suppose, that we're still going to show up to these services. And this is the point of a little bit of what I'm making. It's very difficult to get on some of these situations, especially when we're talking about the enforcement mechanisms yesterday, because, dude, especially in these southern states where we like to say liberty reigns supreme, individualism reigns supreme. If you use the strong power, that strong overreaching arm of government to enforce law on somebody, just by way of pushing back on that, they're going to go show up to a church service. Right? Even if it's not a medically correct thing to do, even if they are putting their own life or somebody else's life in risk, or we can have a conversation about that, but that's not going to matter. If for nothing else, just to tell the government, my First Amendment must be protected, I'm going to show up to the service, which is antithetical to the cause of citing that guy with a violation to begin with, buddy.
Right.
The reason why you would cite a violation of a pastor that's holding service is to hope he doesn't do it again. But what you're not realizing is by citing those charges, you are now emboldening his cause. If you want to say his congregants are deluded, fine, you can say that. But what you have to agree with Mr. Henry Oz, you are then validating their delusion to show up to a service that they now feel like they have a cause to show up to, right, man? It's like everyone needs to get their head around this a little bit, buddy. Everybody needs to get their head around.
How you? Let me ask a question as someone who's been listening to you for a second. How are you tying this back to the Nashville thing? That example you just gave about the churches.
Right. That's what I'm tying back to the Nashville thing by saying, like, even in a situation right now, I'm pretty sure what's going through Cooper's mind is there are little rippled waves that go through all of these decisions, like the decision to increase sales property tax. One of the reasons they didn't go with that in the transit plan in the past is because it's a service-driven economy in Nashville. If we increase the sales tax, less people are going to start visiting our city because everything costs so much more, and we'll be shooting ourselves in the foot, right? We'll just basically be taking money from one bucket to another. I think in this situation here,
to a smaller bucket.
To a smaller bucket, right? So I think in this situation here, I am by no means justifying a substantial property tax increase. But what I am saying is, I think what's going through Cooper's mind a little bit is we got a major economic situation on that we're about to have to deal with, and I am in desperation struggle mode to try and figure out how to fix this situation. Now, importantly, okay, even if this does pass in Nashville, it's still going to have to go by Metro Council approval on April 28th. It would still require the council approval. Now, most of that council, I think, would agree with him on this. So it's likely to pass.
You just wonder, Grant, during an emergency, this is something that really bothers me. Not just on the federal level. We talked about the government being able to do all kinds of things in the beginning of the show because it's an emergency. I think city of Nashville, you never know, because people could just do things and say, well, who's going to stop me? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you say it has to jump through all these hoops, but what if they're not allowed to meet?
Well, and let me say
what if they
this.
have to do it through teleconferencing? That's the only way they can do it, but there's something in the code that doesn't allow for them to do that. There's something in the code that says you have to meet in person, or something like that.
And this is where I was going with Moses, man. I still am holding on to this belief, a genuine belief, that the solution to most of these problems, if not all these problems, has nothing to do with government intervention, even during a time like this right now. Right. And I know that might even border on controversial to say, but I still believe that free, fair markets, that private enterprise can present this with quicker solutions, probably higher quality solutions than a government body could. I still believe that individuals figuring out ways to spend their money in ways that they can without risking the health of their fellow man can solve a situation better than a property tax increase can. I still believe that charitable donations and charitable giving is a better, quicker, more effective solution than a property tax increase. That's what I think I'm getting to. Much like I brought the analogy with the Louisiana story of, if you force government's hands, people are still going to show up to church services. If you don't do that, dude, if you just try and hope that you can convince that pastor, that buddy, please talk to my doctor, talk to somebody else. I know God is on your side, and I believe that personally, but we got some stuff we're dealing with. If you force some of this stuff, man, I just don't see it as a better solution than what we as Tennesseans can do for ourselves. I think that's the analogy I was trying to draw, man. And again, I don't know what's going to happen in this Cooper situation. I think it's likely to pass, and I think across the state of Tennessee, you're likely to see similar things that'll happen.
Well, let me just throw this out there, Mr. Henry, and I don't have all the historical context, and it may be anecdotal to bring this up, but I'll just bring this up as a anecdotal thing. When we experience some economic / what would you call it, international problems via the Great Depression through World War II, that whole era, the 30s through the mid 40s, which may be very similar to the era that we've entered, by the way, may be very similar in a lot of ways. We raised taxes. That's what we did. We raised taxes. I think it was something like a 90% tax on the 1%, and then like a 50% tax on the the higher middle class, like a 50% tax during the war and during the Great Depression, like 50% of your income. And people were still able to like have businesses and stuff. But when we really took off in the early 50s under, I think it was Eisenhower, that's when the tax rates dropped. And I think JFK dropped them even further. And that's when we really exploded. So what I'm saying is I hope some of these leaders look back and look at the historical context on how and look at whether or not we really needed taxes to be that high during the Great Depression and the war, if we really needed that, because that was pre-Bretton Woods too, before we could like print like we're able to do now. You get what I'm saying? We can print a lot more money now, and we control a lot of the valuable resources in the world, which is why everybody wants to do business with us. But I think they should go back and look at the historical context of what cities, counties, and states did as far as taxation as a response to some dire circumstances, and then compare that to the 50s and 60s where they dropped taxes from those rates, and then we saw this great explosion of I mean, I think at one point we were in the 50s we were 50% of the world's manufacturing because of a drop. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there for historical context, that we tried raising taxes, and maybe it got us through it, maybe it didn't. But I know as soon as we dropped them, productivity increased, the economy increased, our percentage of the world's economy increased an incredible amount. So I just wanted to add that for historical context, and I hope our leaders do that as well. In fact, Cooper is actually live right now, talking about COVID-19 in Davidson County. So he's not listening or watching, but if anyone knows him, you can send him this video and tell him where to start listening to. But that's the kind of things we got to watch out for, and I hope people are studying history. And I also want to say this too, Mr. Henry, for the folks in government trying to figure out how this all works, and to your point that the free market and individuals are probably the solution. I just want to say no one was ready for this. No one alive has ever experienced anything like this. And the only people in the United States who had the context to be ready for this are people who work at like CDC and stuff like that. So everyone else in government knows as much as I do. You get what I'm saying? Of how to deal with this. Just because they're in government doesn't mean they're experts on how to deal with this particular issue, because no one knows how to deal with this. No one's ever experienced anything like this. So the collective consciousness of the United States is probably more valuable than individual consciousnesses in figuring out solutions. And we've already seen that with respirators. We've already seen that with COVID-19 tests, where the test would take 48 to 72 hours, had to be shipped to a lab. Now you can do it in 15 minutes from a doctor's office, and I bet you within 2 or 3 weeks they'll have home tests that you can order yourself, and it'll be as easy as a pregnancy test. But that's the free market. That's not government. That's companies who didn't even, what's amazing, it's companies who weren't even doing anything like that. Put their engineers on respirators or COVID-19 tests, and now, bang, you have incredible solutions that were not presented by government. So I would just wanted to build on your point a little bit.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I do think it's going to be the power of all of us together that's going to get us to this situation. And I could probably mark this word right now and say that it's highly likely I'll be correct when I say I doubt it's going to be government, at least not government alone, that's going to get us through this situation. Obviously not,
So
right?
what else you got on your list, Mr.
Yeah,
Who do you want to hit
I was
before
going to
we
say,
head out of here?
I've just drawn some attention to some stuff in the notes section here. I actually want to end just by briefly covering that FISA story, just because if we let it roll too much longer, I think it's going to die a little bit. I just want people to be slightly aware of what's happening there. Draw attention real quick, though, in the notes section that you see my daily show notes up there that I'm putting together. Governor yesterday talking about the COVID-19 surge expected to hit in a few weeks. There's some details on what's going on with that. Also, I just want to make a quick appeal to the audience right now of be a little bit careful of getting too headlong into particular storylines or particular narratives, especially at this time right now, because for every story of dire outcomes or whatever else, or I don't know, of the end of their age apocalyptic scenarios, for every one of those stories, it seems like you can find another story that's saying like, well, this isn't really that bad of a thing. And I think the proper approach is somewhere in between those two, right? I think the proper approach is listening to the experts and also not getting too much into this own weird world of depression about it. I say that just because it was also brought to my attention yesterday that apparently Dr. Fauci, it's in the show notes up there, Dr. Fauci published an article on March 26th, somehow indicating that that this potentially could just be the COVID-19 situation could be just, say, similar to the flu pandemics of 1957 and 68. I don't know, somewhere between 80 to 85,000 as opposed to the 250,000 they're talking about now. Now, again, I don't want to get into this too much. I just bring to people's attention to say, like, you're going to hear stories about this. You're going to hear coverage about this coming out because some people are now saying that the part of the strategy behind how we rolled this information out, or how Dr. Fauci and the Trump administration rolled this information out, was to pump up the stories of massive amounts of American casualties so people would listen, so that we didn't get to massive amounts of American casualties. And possibly after we come down on the crest of this, it may look much less than what we initially anticipated. So again, that's not me speaking. That's the Fauci team. Check that out in the show notes here. But
well, what's important is, like, I think they pumped out the numbers because they've been telling people to do stuff and they're not seeing enough people do it. And they're like, hey, look, it's not about manipulating people. It's like, hey, if we don't do this, here's the numbers. And here's if we do nothing, here's the numbers. Here's if everything goes perfectly, here's the numbers. And they're still bad. All of them are bad. And I think that will still be the case, because you can look at, I mean, even 100,000 deaths, which was what they were talking about on the low end. That's what, double, triple what the flu is every year. That's a lot of people. Now, you shouldn't go around comparing those to wars or comparing them to 9/11. I heard Ben Shapiro yesterday say it's just irresponsible to do that. It's a disease. It's different. It's different. And you can't view it that way. But anyway, please continue.
Well, yeah, and again, I just wanted to make a quick note of that, buddy, because like I can see myself doing this a little bit, right? And I just don't ever want anybody else to get to this part of it as either. You just don't ever let yourself start to think in any sense or capacity that we're not going to be able to get through this, that we're not going to get through this.
We're going to be fine. We're going to make it.
Right. That's what I'm saying, man. And so, again, just ending with this IG Horowitz report, again, just covering the quick points. If we want to bring up some comments section, we can probably bring it up a bit more tomorrow. Quick history as to what's going on here. All right. Everybody remembers IG Horowitz report that was released in December found that the FBI had included at least 17 significant errors or omissions in the Carter Page FISA applications and many errors in the Woods procedures. All right, now this is back in December. The quick history here: Carter Page was the sort of low-level guy in the Trump and then campaign that was being surveilled for 2 solid years. Now, when I say surveilled, I'm talking all metadata included. I'm talking email transmissions, text transmissions, phone calls. I mean, you name a way that they can track somebody, they were tracking this dude. I mean, we've reported on this program already, Shine, how they're tracking location data of private corporations that we make available. I saw a story 2 days ago about how these digital connected, internet connected thermometers, there are now massive heat maps across the United States of people that are registering temperatures across. It's wild what they can actually track. So it's not surprising to people that they were trying to track Carter Page. What should be surprising is that it's the federal government that was doing it through a FISA application, which is a way to get around the Fourth Amendment. A FISA application says we're surveilling a foreign target. We're not necessarily surveilling an American. We're surveilling a foreign target. And if that foreign target so happens to talk to an American target, well, then we'll get incidental data collection on that American target. Fast forward to where we are now, okay? The inspector general was basically looking over all this stuff that had happened in these FISA stuff. They were looking into seeing the FBI had some way to influence the campaign. All right, and we also realized a lot of this stuff was set up, these FISA applications to surveil the Trump campaign. A lot of that stuff was set up through a firm called Fusion GPS that was paid for by Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee. The FBI did not tell the FISA court that where they were getting their information from to justify their surveillance on the Trump campaign was from his opponent. Bro, this was a major, major problem. All right, so fast forward to where we are now. Problem is extend, they say, beyond the Carter Page issue. An audit of the findings of which were released on Tuesday of this week uncovered a lack of properly documented verifications in dozens of these electronic surveillance applications. The Justice Department Inspector General said it does not have confidence in the FBI's FISA application process following the audit and found that the FBI was not sufficiently transparent with the court in 29 of their applications from 2014 to 2019. Recognize those dates. Supremely important those dates are. 2014 to 2019. You're talking the Trump campaign into the near Trump presidency. Are we talking about all the way through the Trump presidency? All of which they say included, quote, apparent errors or inadequately supported facts. Here's the meat of the story right now. These two paragraphs I'm about to quote. DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz report focused narrowly on the Bureau's requirement to create and maintain an accuracy subfile. This accuracy subfile is what they call the Woods file. You'll hear that name thrown around a lot after this COVID-19 stuff dies down. The Woods file is meant to ensure that factual assertions in these FISA applications are backed by what they call demonstrable evidence. Show me the who, what, where, when, why, corroborate it with some legitimate. Otherwise, not surveilling an American target. Going on to say the FBI requires these Woods files to contain supporting documentation for every factual assertion in the FISA application. This is a quote directly here. We believe that the repeated weakness in the FBI's execution of Woods procedures in each of these 29 FISA applications were reviewed, we reviewed date, including, this is supremely important here, including the 4 applications for which the FBI could not furnish an original Wood files, and the ones they sought subsequent renewals for, raised significant questions about the extent to which the FBI is complying with its own requirements. Going on to say that we believe that a deficiency in the efforts to support the factual statements in the FBI's the FISA applications through its Woods procedures undermines the FBI's ability to achieve its scrupulously accurate standards. I stress, last thing I'll say here, Shane, I'll kick it to you. I stress that idea about it being the renewals because the initial FISA court was supported only by that what now we're calling the Steele dossier. Okay. The dossier that was put together through Fusion GPS, this salacious document of it was 30 pages of stuff that Trump just had. It was like blackmail on Trump from Russia. The first one to surveil Carter Page was substantiated only on that. That was the one that was funded by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. They did not tell the court about that. The important part going forward, though, is they've already, Inspector General Horowitz has already said 2 of those applications were not supported by these Woods requirements. And the other 2 here, the renewals, they surveilled Carter Page for 2 years, buddy. The first one wasn't supported, and the renewals, they renewed it 2 different times. 2 different times they renewed their surveillance, and they're saying these other 2 renewals had no substantiation either. Breaking this down, final statement. What we're basically saying is IG Horowitz is straight up telling us they surveilled an individual on a presidential campaign's team, if you will, for 2 years, completely circumvented the 4th Amendment without a shred of substantiated evidence to do so. I'm telling you, buddy, I know this is getting overwhelmed by the COVID-19 story right now, but that's why I needed to go into a little bit of detail here. This is one of the most substantial stories coming out right now that I don't know anybody that's really talking about it right now. That the fact that happened in American history is potentially one of the biggest political scandals we've ever been through. And if it ever happens again, buddy, I don't know. If you couple this with mailing in ballots, see what I'm talking about, Shine? If you couple this situation with everybody or internet voting, dude, I don't know what happens to our republic at that point, right?
Well, you definitely have a dark underbelly of the republic at that point. But I do want to say one of the biggest losses that America faced that people won't even remember is that we were the FISA application or the FISA renewal for the FISA process was coming up in Congress right when this all happened. And there was, because of all these reports and everything that's come out over the past 2 years, there was a strong appetite for reform of the FISA process and a little bit tighter, I don't know if you'd call them regulations, but tighter rules and maybe more oversight. And then people were saying, like, if we don't get that, I'm not going to renew the FISA. I mean, like, you had Lindsey Graham, like the Republican war hawk, you know, that's not named John McCain, you know, like the other John McCain.
Right.
Basically say he would, if he didn't see substantial improvement, he was not going to vote to renew FISA. Now, if you don't know what FISA is, then you probably haven't been listening to Real News very long. I'll just throw that out there, too. If you don't know what the FISA court is, it's the court that goes after people that aren't Americans and allows the government to surveil their telephone conversations, look at their friends of friends on their Facebook pages. If they, you know what I'm saying? Like, and they're friends of friends of friends on their Facebook pages, and all that goes into algorithms and blah, 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 blah. It's a spy thing. And we put a little republic legal layer over top of it to make it feel less like an authoritarian institution, even though that's exactly what it is. I really hope that, I mean, our Congress is all sitting at their houses right now. And they're dealing with their constituents. They're dealing with their states. They're trying to get their constituents money from the federal government. They're not going to have time to read this report. There may be less than 10 members of Congress who read what you're reading right now, Mr. Henry, and that's really unfortunate. I feel like it's one of the biggest losses, and I agree with you. I hope, just like a lot of things, I hope we return back to normal, and they're able to take this up in a more substantial way in Congress, because it's like you said, I think we got out of the whole thing, Mr. Henry, relatively unscathed, considering the rules that were flaunted. Considering what was flaunted, we got out of that whole situation pretty unscathed, but that may not be the case next time. You could see someone rise to power that is more than willing to abuse this, and because you could think about it's not 1995. People abusing these powers doesn't mean one person gets two spooks attached to them and the government finds out everything about this one person. If you flaunt these rules, it's 2020. The government could nationalize Google without telling us, especially during these emergency power times, and could be looking at everyone and know everything about everybody. And they could just pull up information about you based on your social security number or your name. And I mean everything. I mean conversations you're having, anything connected to your computer, so they could come back and listen to Real News if they wanted to, if they looked at what was happening on my computer at this time. But anyway, the implications of this not being bridled or controlled, these powers, are vast and negative. So, and I'll quit droning on about it, but
I think you're exactly right. I mean, that's part of the reason why I brought this up right now is, I mean, we've all heard stories too. I'm actually pulling this up on my screen as I'm talking about this. We've all heard stories recently about these sort of like Bluetooth tracking wristbands that people are going to be wearing, or that like people have floated this idea of these Bluetooth tracking wristbands of people infected with the COVID-19 if and when this comes back during the fall. Right. So I think a lot of this FISA stuff and this whole sort of surveillance activity and it's a time right now, buddy, where people are having, very serious conversations about what is tracking, how much liberty am I going to give up for a little bit more luxury? And importantly, how much of, my rights am I going to be able to give up for the security and to know that I'm protected, that this virus is not going to be passed along. And I think this FISA conversation is one that a lot of people put to bed because, it wasn't pertinent at the time. It wasn't the hot topic, but it's all interrelated, I believe, with this idea of surveillance, with this idea of how much government's going to tell you to do. And frankly, man, like, I think this is a major testing point right now for some of our sort of libertarian beliefs and Republican beliefs. Can we do it by ourselves? Can we get it right? Because if we get it right first, I'll say this, okay? And then we'll end the show on this probably because we got to get out of here and do some actual work, Shannon and I do. But if individuals can get this right now, government won't have an opportunity to act. Right? If individuals can get this right for ourselves, for our fellow mans, for our communities, for our local municipalities, government will not have an opportunity to do it for us because the solution will be there. It will be fixed. We will have found the cause. We found the cause and then found the solution afterwards, right?
Exactly.
It's up to us to be able to do that, though, so the government hand is not forced.
Well, and it's always been up to us. It's always been up to us, and that's never been more apparent than it is now. If we thought it was up to someone else, that was an illusion. Because the reality is that it's up to us. Because and honestly, like, it plays into the whole kind of theme that we've been playing with, is that we need each other. And it's always been up to us. It's our responsibility, and we need each other. And we encourage you, hang out and talk with those people in the chat room. Like, get to know each other, message each other. Let's create a community. Let's hang out. Let's not let this all go to our heads. And let's come out on the other side stronger than we were before. Mr. Henry, I'll give you the last word here, about 15 seconds. I already got the music playing.
Yeah, I just wanted to promote some of the things we got coming up here. Next week, we're setting up interviews, obviously with Representative Jason Zachary, setting up interviews with Representative Justin Lafferty. We're also going to be having something set up here as well coming up in the near future for tomorrow's program. Let me say this. I'll have a little link out there. It's the first time we're trying this, so we're going to have to iron out some of the technical kinks, but I'll have a little link that I can send y'all in the chat room for this sort of like chat meet and greet hangout session that Sean and I are putting on. It'll send you to an area where you can RSVP, and through that RSVP process, you'll have a Zoom link that when you click on, it'll send you to this whole sort of like thing that Sean and I are using now. So we're setting this up for either late Friday night, sometime on Saturday. Sean and I still are working out the timing, but the idea is like sort of like just a social hangout session with the two of us. Right, I'm doing that with my people here in the Middle Tennessee. We're doing this with people in East Tennessee. We're trying to just like build these communities, getting stuff together, hanging out in social chat session, talking politics, playing games, maybe happy hour. Who knows, buddy?
Well, send us a direct message with your email, so Greg can send you an invite. Send Real News a direct message so we can send you an invite. It's the kind of thing you want to be at. Trust us, it's going to be a great time, and we're going to do lots of them. It's going to be it's going to be a good time. We got to figure out how to make this work, all being at our houses and getting to hang out. We got to figure that out, and we will together, because we need each other, and it's up to us. So,
all right, y'all.
All right. Well, hey, this has been Real News. We'll keep the details on that on the Real News page. Maybe Grant can put up a post about it today. Maybe just a little info post, Grant. So we'll be looking for that. We'll be doing some kind of watch party later on today, where we'll be playing either some YouTube videos or the White House, or who knows. But this has been Real News. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.